Okay, I'm going to make a color splash in Photoshop, and it's not as tricky as you might think. So I have my photo open in Photoshop and start by unlocking the layer that it's on. And I'm going to duplicate this layer. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to head up to duplicate layer and say OK. You'll see I have two copies of the layer, and I'm going to make this top one black and white. I can do that down here, but I can also head up to image, adjustments, and then down to black and white. This way it'll just affect the top layer. And I'm going to click the auto button, not a requirement, but it'll automatically make some adjustments for you, and say OK. So now I have my black and white layer, and the color layer is underneath. And I can use a layer mask right here, and we'll switch these things around. When I have black, it'll take away the image. When I have white, it'll bring it back. So I'm going to use my brush tool with black in front, and anywhere I start to use this brush, I can have the color come back. I'm going to undo that real quick. Edit, undo. Another way to do it is there's this object selection tool, which is pretty good. So I'm going to use that tool, and I'll bring my cursor down over the top of my subject, and I'll click once. It'll make a selection around it. You can see it selected. Then when I get my brush, I can use a really large size brush, crank it up, because it's only going to affect what's in the selection. So I don't even have to worry about being careful with it. And there it goes. And I can also just deselect that now. Select, deselect. And I can still edit from there. The selection tool isn't perfect, so you can see it missed that spot right there. So I can go back to my brush, get a smaller brush size, and I can also include that in there. Or if I wanted to include something like this, I can still mask that away. If I wanted to include more parts, I can go through. And if I ended up getting a part that I didn't really mean to, I went kind of crazy, I can switch white in front, and white would get rid of all that color. And I can go back and edit, fine tune, zoom in, use a smaller brush, that kind of stuff to really make it look perfect, and kind of going back and forth, switching between the black and white. But that is the basics of setting up a color splash in Photoshop.